And I'm Lizzie Wine with Transportation for Massachusetts. Jamie and I are here tonight on behalf of the 28 sponsor groups who wanted to bring the candidates together to find out how the next mayor will make our city more livable and improve transportation for everyone. Raise your hand if you are part of tonight's sponsor groups as I call out the sponsor group names. Alston Brighton Bikes, Arbor Way Committee, Bikes Not Lounge, Boston Collaborative for Food and Fitness, Boston Collective Delivery, Boston Park Advocates, Charles River Conservancy, Circle the City, Conservation Law Foundation, Liberal Necklace Conservancy, the Environmental League of Massachusetts, Fairmount Indigo Line CDC Collaborative, Franklin Park Coalition, Green Streets Initiative, Livable Streets Alliance,
and then the Massachusetts Association of Community Development Corporations, Massachusetts Bicycle Coalition, Massachusetts League of Environmental Voters, Massachusetts Public Health Association, Madigan Food and Fitness Coalition, Metropolitan Area Planning Council, Northeastern University. On the move. Rutherford Corridor Improvement Coalition. Southwest Corridor Park Conservancy. Transportation for Massachusetts. And Walk Boston. What a great bunch of groups representing just a huge amount of people in our city and a huge amount of interest. I want to thank everyone who made tonight possible, and I just want to also thank everybody sitting in this room today, and also watching in the other room as well. It's just really inspiring to see that so many people care about making Boston a more livable city.
Tonight promises to be an interesting evening. The preliminary election is just 1 week away. All the candidates were invited to the forum this evening. You will hear from 9 of them tonight. Many of them provided answers to a questionnaire that we sent out along with a briefing book. We had a few copies out at the beginning, but you can visit transportation.blogspot.com for a copy of the briefing book and survey answers. And we would also be remiss if we didn't thank one of our honored guests in the audience this evening, Secretary Rich Davey, who has just been an incredible inspiration for all of us who do transportation.
Great, and lastly, I just want to remind everyone to please turn off all electronic devices, or at least turn off the sound. If you want to, you can use your device to follow the debate live on Twitter. It's actually, the hashtag is Mayor4LivableBoss, B-O-S. And you can also tweet a question to the candidates if you have one, and you're able to use the basket in the back. Great, and then we're just going to turn it over to our moderators for the evening. Stephanie Pollock, the Associate Director of the Kitty and Michael Dukakis Center for Regional and Urban Policy, and Paul McMorrow, the Associate Editor at Commonwealth Magazine.
So again, I want to thank everyone for being here this evening, and to just say how excited we are to have these wonderful candidates and this terrific audience. Transportation is one of those issues that I think interests everyone because it's so much a part of the quality of life and the economy and vitality of the wonderful city that is Boston. And so we're hoping to have a great conversation this evening and hopefully help everyone learn some things that will help them sort out the different candidates' position on this important topic in the week between now and the primary. We're going to try several different formats to try to get as much information and about the candidates' positions out there as we can. And my other hope, and I know a lot of the folks in this room are going to be back talking to whichever of these candidates becomes the next mayor of Boston, reminding them of some of the things they said tonight to make sure that we get some follow through. So with that, I'm going to ask my co-moderator, Paul, to just quickly go through the format for how the evening's going to work and then start the questioning. Paul.
Paul McMorrow with Commonwealth Magazine and the Boston Globe op-ed page. Multiple question formats. We have some long answers. We have some short answers to which a few of you will be asked to respond. We also have rapid-fire questions. The most important thing is to pay attention to the gentleman with the bright red sign. When he holds it up, you will come to a stop and we'll keep this thing moving. Stephanie's going to kick it off with the rapid fire.
So the way this format is going to work is we're going to periodically take breaks and we're going to ask you some rapid fire questions, and actually we're going to ask you some yes or no questions, and if later in the evening you would like to build on your answer, you are of course welcome to. I don't know, Paul, what do you think? We're going to let them answer presents if they, no. So you've got to answer yes or no. So when we ask you yes or no, and then in some cases we will say you've got a few seconds and we'll ask. So the first one is we're going to give you, we just want 10 seconds, a few words from each of you to name a neighborhood in Boston and 2 things about that neighborhood that you think contribute to livability. We're trying to get at what you think of when we use the word livability. So for this one, I think what we will do is we'll try different orders for these, but for this one we'll start at this end and work down, and then the next one will go the other direction. So Felix, why don't you take this first? A neighborhood, and so a couple of words or phrases that make it livable.
The only candidate who lives in Jamaica Plain on the stage. I'm going to go with my home neighborhood of Jamaica Plain. My place is probably a little bit, but there are 4 public MBTA train stations in Jamaica Plain. There are Forest Hills, Ray Street, Stony Brook, Jackson's Quarry. That makes Jamaica Plain very T accessible. But also we have probably the best bike lanes in the city of Boston.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go with my neighborhood, the Dudley Street neighborhood. And what do we? I would say JP, but yeah. No, we have actually been able to, by design, create small open spaces and trying to network open and green spaces in our neighborhood so that no child has to walk more than 5 minutes before they can find a place where they can play with other children.
Great. And again, we're not saying these are your favorite neighborhoods. We're not asking you to pick a neighborhood and what makes it livable, Charles.
Dorchester. Yeah! North Dorchester. Of course, Franklin Park. Franklin Park is where you can meet people. Franklin Park is where you go work out. Franklin Park is healthy, and it's about being healthy. So Franklin Park.
Great, John.
I'm going to go with Alston, and I will reference the park right across from the bus stop dining restaurant there, which we're taking my kids to play. But why I really am bringing up Alston is Western Ave, the only cycle track in the city. I have biked it, and it's a very enjoyable 45 seconds.
Of course I love Dorchester. It's my home. But I'm going to say JP.
Thank you.
I've converted in terms of just falling in love with JP. It's a great place with a wonderful downtown area where you can buy all sorts of things and then fabulous open space. I think it's definitely a neighborhood that I've come to really appreciate greatly in this campaign.
I'm going to say Savin Hill. We have 2 train stations. We have, right within walking distance of each other, we have a tennis court from the City of Boston Parks Department. We have a basketball court. We have a beach. We have a baseball field. We have a lot of trees. We have a lot of area around there in the space. And as mayor of the City of Boston, I'd like to take that area and improve it and make sure that every neighborhood has an opportunity to have some of the things that Savin Hill has.
I would say Dorchester as well, not only because I've raised, along with my wife Marzetta, 4 children, but it's the only neighborhood where you can, at least suburban, only neighborhood south of downtown Boston, that you actually have a strong system of, you have diversity, you have a subway stop, you have a feel of suburbia right in the heart of the city, particularly with regards to Wellesley Park and Melville Avenue. So I would have to say my home of Dorchester.
Great. And as a test of thinking on your feet, Counselor, what we were doing was we're doing a lightning round of questions, and the question is to name a neighborhood. Doesn't mean it's your favorite, but a neighborhood of the city. 10 seconds, a couple things about that neighborhood that you think really illustrate what it means for a neighborhood to be livable.
You know, I'm really bullish on East Boston. I think it's such a cool neighborhood. I think we have to make sure you can get there. I am committed to working with Chelsea to make sure that we have a direct path, a safe path for our bikers. But I gotta confess, I like the food. I like the food of East Boston, and I think it's just a great, edgy, diverse community, and I'm a big fan.
Great. Okay, so guys, did a great job. Hopefully we'll keep that up for the evening. Now the next set of lightning questions are very simple because they're just raise your hand, yes, no questions to sort of help give folks in the room and who are watching a sense of sort of how you use the transportation system that's available in the city of Boston. So the first question is, at any point have you commuted to work primarily not in a car? In other words, using transit, a bike, walking? Yes, if you get ready. Okay, great. So everybody's done that. Good for you. Second question is, do you either own a bicycle or a Hubway bike sharing membership? Raise your hand if the answer is yes. Terrific. Okay. The next question is, do you have a monthly MBTA pass?
Oh, should we show it?
No. Okay, we got one. Yeah. No, pass. An actual pass. A Charlie card. Okay. So we'll do that one too. Just pour out. How many people have a Charlie card on right now? Okay. That's fair follow-up question. We're going to trust and verify. Okay. So. All right. And this is the last question in the lightning round, and then I'm going to turn it over to Paul, and we're going to give you a little longer to give answers. But the last question is, last time the city of Boston did a citywide transportation master plan was around the year 2000. If you were elected mayor, yes or no, would you fund the development of a new master plan on transportation for the city? Yes, raise your hand if the answer is yes. Terrific. All right.
We are moving into a long form question. This is the first and only question that the candidates had in advance. We'll have 90 seconds to answer, and then we have time for a 30-second follow-up. We're going to work in a predetermined random order, starting off with Felix. If you're thirsty, we can wait.
Very random.
Please tell us, what's your top transportation priority, and give us a couple of examples of how you would actually implement it in office.
Promoting transportation equity and universal access would be my top transportation priority. An awful lot of it comes from my commitment to working with poverty in our city. You know, 1 in 5 Bostonians live under the federal poverty line. It's a very low line. It's $23,000 for a family of 4. 1 in 5 live there. 40% of Latino children, 35% of Black children, 1 in 3 Asians. It's a very serious issue in our city. And if we're not promoting transportation equity and universal access, then we're not going to be able to get out of poverty. We need transportation. Some of the ways that we're thinking about it is to ensure improvements are made to our transportation infrastructure to protect low-income residents and, continuing to keep housing costs affordable. The other would be working with the MBTA to keep public transportation safe, reliable, and affordable. If it's to be public, it has got to be affordable. If it's not affordable, then in fact, you could really be gauging whether or not it is public, even if you call it so.
And just as a quick follow-up, how would you measure equity? Is it by commute times? Is it by access to routes? Who has subways versus who has bus access? What are the metrics there?
Let me answer that by example. You know, where I live in Jamaica Plain, I spoke of our 4 train stations that we have in our neighborhood. I can get to City Hall, where I work now, and on a train in about 20 minutes. If I was to do that from a neighboring neighborhood, it could take an hour and 10 minutes. The difference in a car would be 5 minutes from my home, but it would still take an hour and 10 minutes. That's not transportation equity. And we have to work to ensure that that's possible. We had an opportunity to really work towards that. Legislature had a governor's tax plan before them that would have helped with that. They dropped the ball, they didn't support it. I would have supported it as mayor. I'm going to move for something very similar.
Bill Walzak, your top transportation priority as mayor.
My top transportation priority would be to change the culture that leads us towards automobiles. I think in order to be able to do that, we need comprehensive master planning across our city and across our region around making sure that that we have transportation that allows people to get away from their cars. So that includes an ability to bike, an ability to walk, an ability to take public transportation. I think public transportation is the key element here. If we're able to make sure that we have a top-notch transportation system as opposed to one that's ranked, I believe, 17th out of 29 cities right now, we will be able to convince more people to leave their cars behind. But we also need to be able to extend the hours of that. We need to be able to eventually go to a 24-hour city, but we have to figure out how to pay for that. But we certainly need to extend the hours of it. I think transit-oriented development is also a major factor here. If we're able to build more dense housing around our transit stations, around bus stations, commuter rail stations, and do it in a regional basis. These issues are regional issues. The mayor of Boston needs to be the mayor of Boston, but focused on the region for so many issues, especially transportation. This is one of my goals, is to be regionally oriented so that we can really deal with all of those issues, the alternatives to automobile transit and moving more towards alternative transportation modes.
As a quick follow-up, Bill, you talked about changing auto culture. Do you have a number in mind in terms of target of non-automotive commuters that you'd like to see? And does that number differ for Boston, City of Boston residents versus folks coming in from Cambridge, Somerville, and beyond?
What's the question?
Rich Davies up front. A mode shift number. What's your target for non-automotive commuters?
I mean, I know that there's an idea that we can get upwards of 50%. I think that's a reach for this particular generation, but I don't think that a quarter of all transportation trips by alternative means is beyond our scope, beyond the possibility for Boston. It's a small-scale city, lots more people moving into the city of Boston, and if we're able to really provide the kind of transportation system and the housing that's necessary to be able to accommodate that, we should be able to drive that number upwards towards half over the next 20 years.
Marty Walsh, 90 seconds, your top transportation priorities, man.
I think the first thing is coming up with a true transportation plan in the city of Boston that works with MassDOT and the MBTA on how do we improve service. I think we have to certainly improve service to underserved communities with public transportation. We also have to look at connecting bike lanes in the city of Boston. There's been a lot of discussion in these forums and in this campaign about having true bike lanes. And we have a bike lane on Dorchester Avenue, but it's really not a safe bike lane, and it doesn't connect to anything. And we have to look at how do we connect bike lanes, like we're doing it with MassDOT and the former MDC, connecting the bike lane around the Neponset River. We also have to look at how do we bring in technology into the city of Boston as far as traffic lights, and it can also deal with bicycles and also people, pedestrians on the sidewalk. In my district, or right outside my district, we have a place called the Boston Home, and every resident in that home is in a wheelchair. We should have the technology in our lighting systems that they have something hooked up to their wheelchair, they can change the light for them and be able to tell that it's a longer light cycle than others. We also need to be able to move traffic around the city of Boston. I think by upgrading our light signals here, in certain parts of the city trying to get here, you go from light to light, red to red to red to red, green to red, green to red, green to red. And there should be a way to be able to move the traffic around the city of Boston by working in a central office that they're moving it along. And also walking. We have to also do more about walking. We should be able to make sure that our children and anybody who wants to walk to a park is walking there safe, where the crosswalks are well designated and at night well lit, so people have a chance to be able to walk to the park.
Prior to tonight, either all of you or all your staffs answered some questionnaires, the results of which are posted on my website right there. Marty, in your survey, you said that you were well qualified as mayor to work with the MBTA to try to make it more customer service oriented. Please walk us through what you would do as mayor to that end.
I mean, first of all, I'd have a very open dialogue with the MBTA, and I think my 16 years on Beacon Hill, I've always had an open line of communication with the MBTA, regardless of who the general manager was. I've worked with them, and one example is in my district of Dorchester. One of the first things I was able to secure was funding to renovate the 4 red line stations. If you look at the map of the MBTA, you see a spider. And there were 4 stations on that. The last 4 stations on that map to be renovated was Savin Hill, Fields Corner, Ashmont, and Shawmut. And I was able to work with the MBTA to secure funding for that. And I've always had a very good, close relationship with the MBTA and being able to work out different items in my district. And I certainly will be able to do that as mayor.
John Barris, 90 seconds, please, your top transportation priority as mayor.
My top priority will be creating more livable communities through zoning and planning. We absolutely need to create a master plan. And the master plan needs to be citywide, but it needs to start in our neighborhoods. We need to make sure that our neighborhoods and the residents in our neighborhoods are guiding the projects and developments. And then we need to make Boston streets more human scale. We have way too many streets that are kind of drive-throughs in our neighborhood. You know, cars are just going through and they're not stopping on main streets, and there's no reason to stop. And part of that is reducing some of the size of the street, giving it more to pedestrians, giving it more to bikes, and making it that cars can't just fly through our streets. And then we need to put more buildings on the edge of the streets and put parking in the back with less curb cuts, making it more pedestrian friendly, and making sure that we've got more activity on the first floor, that people are actually active in our neighborhoods, and there's reason to stop and there's reason to go into buildings, etc. We need to make sure that when we renovate a building or when we create new buildings, that there is infrastructure for biking, for bicycling, and for car sharing, and that this just is a part of our culture and what we're doing. And then, finally, after we do the planning and rethink our neighborhoods and make it more livable, we need to change the zoning and make it easier for us to get there and make the permitting process a lot friendlier for this. Thanks.
Quickly, it seems like a lot of what you're talking about right here is an interaction between the BRA and the Boston Transportation Department inside City Hall. Do you feel that they work together often enough right now?
Yeah, I don't think, I think our departments are siloed at the city, 42 departments and siloed. I think one of the ways that we can make sure that they're working better together is to have comprehensive planning. If in fact all of our planning had a livability lens, had a sustainability lens, and we were asking for, and we separated planning out of the VRA and created a planning department for the city, then we would ask transportation and VRA to respond to that plan and not have everybody planning their different spheres and different silos.
Great. So I'm just going to continue in the same vein. The next candidate is Charles Clemens. What would be your top transportation priorities and some specific examples? 90 seconds.
Thank you. As the owner of a transportation company for 23 years, I've always listened to my customers. So community process is really important. Listening to the residents, having community meetings, not when a project is about to happen, but having that dialogue with the community on an ongoing basis, listening to the community. Because when you listen to the community, you can find out exactly what's needed. You have folks that ride bicycles, so definitely it would be cycling, the pedestrians, and then of course those that drive vehicles. They have to work together in harmony. So as mayor of the city of Boston, I want to make sure that dialogue is happening. And then also we have to get into the funding and make sure that we have the money to make sure that what the community needs happens. Thank you.
Quick follow-up question. In your questionnaire, you talked about working as mayor with MassDOT and the MBTA. You just mentioned funding. What do you think is the city's responsibility on these issues, and what do you think is the state responsibility?
But I think we share those responsibilities, and I have this master plan that I sent to the governor in 2009 as far as funding. And this one here, a lot of people will agree on that when it comes to property taxes, colleges and universities do not pay the same amount of taxes that we pay. They pay something in lieu of. If you were to have the colleges and universities in 1 year pay the same amount of taxes that we pay, it would generate $47 billion. With the state and a $9 billion deficit, we can offset that.
Okay. Mike Ross, 90 seconds, your top transportation priorities with some examples.
I want to be as committed to public transit as Secretary Rich Davies. I want that to be the standard. You know, for years and well in the past, it used to be that the MBTA was a state agency, not a city agency. The next mayor of the city of Boston can't treat it like a state agency. He has to treat it like it's their problem, and I will. We have to prioritize everything the MBTA is doing, and we can't do it alone. We need to partner with our friends from Cambridge and Somerville and form an urban caucus up at the State House so that half measures, like what was recently passed at the State House, don't get passed again. We need to stand together and insist that there's a full funding of our MBTA, and we need to plan. We have housing in the city that doesn't have access to transit, and transit in the city that doesn't have access to transportation. We have the Fairmont line is a favorite of mine that I've been going to, and there's no housing around. Here's actually an investment that's been made all the way out to Hyde Park, where it's perfect to build transit-oriented development. Even in Ashmont, you know, the Caruth building, a single building. We have the opportunity to do so much more. I'd like to build our neighborhoods, affordable housing, market rate housing, student housing, elderly housing. To do that, we're going to need transit, which has become the limiting factor.
And a quick follow-up question. You mentioned that you would form an urban caucus at the State House. Given what we just saw happening in the legislature, what would you do differently that would have won us more funding for the T than we were able to get?
We would have told our state reps and our state senators to stand up for the cities that they represent. We would have insisted that they support the governor, that they support his veto, that it didn't have to get to a veto, that adequate funding has been put into our MBTA, not 1 year, not 2 years, not 5 years, but 10 years, but over and over and over. And no one is stronger than some mayors and city councilors standing together. But we don't treat Cambridge like our ally. We treat them like the enemy. We need to change that.
Great. Councilor Nancy, your turn. Top transportation priorities.
Well, I want the public transportation system to move into the 21st century. Our residents have a much different lifestyle today than they had 50 years ago. So that means looking at extended hours. We have many people who go to work at 3 a.m., yet they cannot access rapid transit. We have many people who live in Hyde Park, Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, who don't have effective access to rapid transit in spite of the tremendous investment we made in the Fairmont line. The Fairmont line is a commuter line that doesn't provide evening service or weekend service. I would fight for LRB along that ride and extend and make that a part of our rapid transit system.
As a follow-up, do you have specific ideas for how you could work with the MBTA and make these things happen and pay for them?
Yes, in fact, every time I talk to Secretary Davies, he leaves with $10 million less in his pocket. I think, the city of Boston pays an assessment to the MBTA of $81 million in fiscal year 2014. I think it's more than reasonable to expect that the residents of Boston should receive some consideration for extending these hours by adjusting the budget. But I also don't believe it's fair that the MBTA is straddled with debt as a result of the big D. I think once we remove that debt from their balance sheet, it would free up some resources to do some of the other creative things that each of us have talked about tonight.
Great, and finally, for this round, John Connolly, 90 seconds, your transportation priorities.
Thank you. I just wanted to open by saying it's very embarrassing to be 10 feet from Secretary Davey and not have a Charlie card. I just want to say I did have one and I lost it, and that's the honest to God truth. I do have one of my Charlie tickets here. I'll tell you, it was used when I come off the campaign trail for a day. I like to spend that day with my kids. My 3.5, almost 4-year-old is obsessed with the T. And our mission was to ride every subway and what he calls the purple line. In the same day, we accomplished it. I want to just mention a red-blue connector could have saved me a lot of eggs. I know you are passionate about that as well. But look, my top priority, something a mayor can do right in day one that I will do is I will reshape the Boston Transportation Department so that we adopt complete streets planning as our rule in everything that we do when it comes to streetscapes and intersections and all that the Boston Transportation Department does, so that we put pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists on an equal footing, and that we have complete streets guidelines flowing through all that we will do in city government. I want to make that an absolute priority. As part of that, another substantive piece that a mayor can make happen, use our capital budget to prioritize the construction of cycle tracks. Make that happen in my first budget. Those are the priorities where I would begin.
Great. Now, in your answer, you mentioned the Boston Transportation Department. In your questionnaire, you also talked about the Boston Redevelopment Authority. What do you see as the roles of those two agencies in a transportation agenda for the next mayor?
Well, I think, again, as I think many of us have talked about during the course of this campaign, we need to bring a new era of transparency to the Boston Redevelopment Authority. I want to see planning separated, and whether it's as an entirely separate or within, under the umbrella, I'm open to any idea that will enable us to plan as a city. And part of that planning means we have to think about every facet of the plan, including transportation, and that's where I would just come back again and say, we simply need to make sure that the engineers and all of the personnel in the Boston Transportation Department are following guidelines that put complete streets planning at the beginning and the middle of all that we do.
It is rapid fire time. Again, we're going to start it. Charles Yancey, work our way back this way. In 10 seconds or less, please tell us what your favorite public space is in Boston and why.
Actually, the Boston Public Gardens is my favorite spot when I have the time to get away from City Hall and debrief from major battles on legislative issues.
Money.
It wasn't my public space before this campaign started, but being over there a lot is Constitution Beach over in East Boston. I find that it's a great beach. The facilities over there with the bathhouse and the refreshment stands. That's something that you don't see in an inner city beach, and I think it's nice.
Bill.
I think the Ponset River Bikeway is just superb. I love riding my bike down there and do it as often as I can.
Mike.
I'm going to say the Boston Common. Because a group of us got together and we weren't happy with what we were seeing, we brought it back and we borrowed ideas from other cities to do so.
John Conlon.
I'd say Franklin Park. I love it. That's very close to where I live, and again, for me, a great place for family to go.
Charles.
Franklin Park, cookout area, ponds, baseball field, golf course, tennis courts, and it brings back great memories.
John.
Of course, City Hall Plaza. Such a joke. Get done with City Hall Plaza, you guys will not laugh. Right now, Franklin Park.
Felix.
I'm going to go real person. It's Jefferson Park. It's from coaching youth sports there, youth baseball, and I just have such great memories with the kids that I coach at that park.
We all know that Boston's a great walking city. Please raise your hand if you would plan on appointing a staffer who will be a point person in your administration for walking and pedestrian issues. Please raise your hand if you would create a separate planning agency outside of Boston Redevelopment Agency Authority. Please raise your hand if you would support a meaningful increase in the number of taxi medallions that the city awards. If you would increase the number of medallions. Increase the number of medallions. And please raise your hand if you would support congestion pricing in the downtown area for commuters.
You can tell Derek we asked the question. Okay, so in the next round of questions, the way we're going to do them is we're going to ask one question to a specific candidate that we, again, randomly pick the order, and then we're going to give two people an opportunity to respond to that answer and to provide their own answer. So as an example, this first question I'm going to ask Marty Walsh, and then I'm going to give Bill Walzak and John Barros an opportunity. And so in this round, everyone will get a chance to be the first answer, and you get 60 seconds for that, and then everybody will eventually get a chance to do a couple of the 30-second responses. So, Marty, everyone has talked about the importance of public transportation and the fact that not all neighborhoods in Boston have equal access to transportation, and the fact that the T doesn't have enough money. So, you know, you've obviously been on the Hill through the recent debate. Some specific ideas for what you would do to improve the MBTA system, to work with the MBTA as mayor?
That's a good question. I think, first of all, work with the MBTA right now after the funding package we just did. I know some people up here in the state say we haven't raised enough taxes to deal with the transportation system. However, in this package, we address the transportation issue. So the first thing I do is work with the MBTA on seeing how we can collaboratively work together, even getting more money into the MBTA through private development. I think it's very important. I think there's some neighborhoods that are underserved that we have a plan to try and bring economic development to those neighborhoods, and ask some of those developers that when they come into a neighborhood to help us with funding some programs so we can improve bus lines. I think we also have to work with the MBTA in making sure that we keep the fares equitable, particularly on the Fairmont line. The Fairmont line is fairly a new line, not a new line, but there's 4 new stations in the Dorchester area, and work with people trying to do the trades-oriented development there, not just housing, but also bring in some economic development there. And I think the best thing to do is have a true partnership, a relationship that goes back and forth, not a one-way relationship and not when it's convenient, but have a consistent discussion about how we can work together.
Bill Walzak.
Well, the tech tax is about to be repealed, and this is a great opportunity because we're going to have to replace those dollars, and maybe we could go back to the original plan by Governor Patrick for $1 billion a year that not only stabilizes the MBTA, but also replaces some of the ancient cars that we have on our lines. But we need to do better than that. So I would absolutely say this is our opportunity to go all the way and do things like extend the Silver Line to Mattapan Square and make sure that we have the urban ring and extend the blue line and the green line. This is our opportunity now because it's all going to be revisited now.
Great. John Barros?
So we are asking Marty a question?
No, you're responding to the question and the previous responses.
All right, you'll have to look, Marty. It's unfortunate we did not pass Patrick's legislative package. And, I think there were a failure in 2 different places. There was a failure at the state level, and then there was a failure at the city level in terms of leadership. Boston didn't have a plan. We didn't have a voice. We watched the state legislative body go back and forth between the governor and our state legislators, and we didn't really say anything about it. Most of us don't even know what we're going to do with the $800 million. We need to plan for our transportation system so the next time our political officials are having a conversation, we can be in it.
Quickly.
Actually, we did raise transportation funds in the legislature this year. What we didn't pass was the other proposal the governor had, And the transportation funds that were allocated, it's actually up to Secretary Davey to work in allocating that. So as the mayor of Boston, I would certainly work with the secretary to help see where he would allocate some of those funds and try and work with him on behalf of the city as well.
Okay. We're going to have some guest questioners come up throughout this round, and so we're now going to have our first guest questioner, and he's going to have a question for Felix, who will have 60 seconds to respond, and then we're going to ask Mike Ross and Marty Walsh to do 30-second responses. So introduce yourself to the candidates and our audience.
Hi, my name is Todd Constantino. I live in Rosendale on the Mattapan line. Thank you. One of the main reasons my wife and I decided to buy a home and raise our children here in Boston is our belief that we would not need to rely on a car for transportation. I have a bus stop at the end of my street, but the T stations are over a mile away from me. I find riding a bicycle to be the quickest, easiest, and most fun way to move my children and myself around our city. And as a car-free parent of young children, I'd like to know, what are your priorities to make sure that the city's transportation policies meet the needs of all its residents?
Felix first.
Sure, thank you. You know, my brother is a car-free parent who lives in Rosendale and travels every day with my 5-year-old nephew on the back of his bicycle. Your question, Todd, is quite personal to me. I want to know that my brother and my 5-year-old nephew can travel safely throughout the city of Boston. You know, I had the privilege of going to a Velocity conference in Seville, Spain, to talk the idea around bicycling. Cycle tracks we have to move from the idea of cycle tracks being nice to the idea of cycle tracks being necessary, and to ensure safety in our streets. You know, in Seville, it's awesome. It's separated, it's painted green, everyone knows that's what it's supposed to use. We have to connect our bicycles lanes, and under my administration, our new cycle tracks to make sure that they lead someplace, not just to downtown, but lead to other neighborhoods, so our neighborhoods can be connected. And we also have to understand that when we do development in Boston, when we plan in Boston, that there are 4 basic modes of transportation: the vehicle, public transportation, pedestrian, and cycling. And we have got to make sure that all 4 are safe and accessible every time we develop, not some of the times, but all the time.
Thanks, Todd. Cycle tracks are obviously going to be the safest choice for you and your family. And they need to, as Felix said, go downtown, but also connect our neighborhoods to each other. And they should be as wide as possible. 5 feet where we can make it, 6 feet if we can. I also have a vision for connecting the Boston Common all the way to Franklin Park. Frankly, trying to connect the Rose County Greenway through downtown to the Boston Common, and then all the way with one continuous cycle track lane, so that you and your family can take longer and longer rides and one day do the entire thing.
I think one of the things that I mentioned earlier was connecting bike lanes around the city of Boston. I think it's vitally important that as we develop our city and our neighborhoods, that we really do connect bike lanes. We had an opportunity in Dorchester with Dorchester Avenue with the stimulus programs to really do some great things on Dorchester Avenue for bicyclists, and we didn't do it. We painted the lines down the side. But we also have to do more education of bikers and drivers to let people know, and we have to do PSAs, public service announcements. The Mass Pike, they put PSAs on the Mass Pike all the time. We have to make drivers more aware of the fact that there are bicyclists out there, and to be careful, and also tell bicyclists that there are cars on the road, so you have to be careful as well. I think that's one of the things that's lacking here.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Todd. You speak for a lot of people.
We've heard a lot about bike lanes and cycle tracks tonight. We're going to keep that going for a little bit more. 60 seconds to Bill Walczak, and then 30-second responses from Felix and Charles Clemens. Where and when would you put down both bike lanes, cycle tracks, and also dedicated bus lanes? What are the factors that you would weigh? What are the metrics? Take me through your thought process as mayor, as where these would actually go and how you would make it happen, please.
Well, I've been a strong advocate for replicating Washington Street in the South End. That's the road that I go down when I'm traveling from Dorchester to downtown on my bicycle. And I go down Washington Street because of the fact that the Silver Line lane is there. And I think it's a good match for bicyclists. When I think about a 12-foot wide or 15-foot wide lane that we share with the Silver Line, you're certainly not going to miss the Silver Line bus, at least seeing it. And one of the things that's really important is being able to have really good roads that have wide access. So my thinking is that we need to start reprogramming our streets, and that we have certain streets that are going to be much more favorable towards bicycles and public transit buses, that are also have timed lights and other things to make public transit more efficient and more competitive with private transit. And that we need to do it across the city and across the region. We need to have a regional system of that we know. You look at, go to San Francisco, there's certain roads you can go out and come back in very quickly. We need to do something in Boston that allows for public transit and bicyclists to share lanes, so we can have really broad opportunities to commute.
Felix, 30-second response, please.
I'm saddened that the last city budget I've advocated for it, so my colleagues up here did as well, did not include the cycle tracks that we thought were coming to the public garden to Vilnia Cass. And as mayor, we will make sure that those cycle tracks come. I believe there was belief it would come, and they should come. When it comes to where else, I abhor top-down style leadership. In fact, I truly, as an organizer, believe with working with communities, whether geographical communities of interest, and I think you should work with neighborhoods and with the cyclist communities about where cycle tracks should go and where they belong. But as I said before, we have got to move from nice to necessary when it comes to cycle tracks.
Charles Clements, please.
Again, basically it's simply listening to the community, having the meetings with the community, listening to the community. For so long we have allowed government to actually do what they want to do. When we have these meetings and we listen to what the communities need, we take and we implement those needs. As mayor of the city of Boston, Clemens administration will be totally transparent. We'll bring everyone to the table, and we'll make sure that when it comes to bicycle lanes, pedestrians, we'll definitely put them number one. Thank you.
Next question is another guest question. 60 seconds to Charles Yancey with 30 seconds from John Conley and Mike Ross.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Ann Hirschbang. I live in the South End, and I think that we are very lucky to have such smart and capable people as the candidates for mayor of Boston. I'm a member of Walk Boston, which is a pedestrian advocacy group, and we're the first in the country, 23 years and counting. And in all those years, I've been working on pedestrian issues and environment. And pedestrians tend not, I think with you men, but tend to be sort of overlooked. There's so many of us, everybody's a pedestrian. They walk to work, they walk to the train, back from the train, you walk to the park. I mean, everything you've said about your favorite park and everywhere is pedestrian related, but people tend not to focus on it. And in order to create good pedestrian environments, the comfortable, safe sidewalks, the intersections, the crosswalks, the signal timing, slowed cars, you need a lot of attention to it, and it needs to be brought to the front of your consciousness. So that's just my little opinion. But what do you think are the 3 or 4 most important things to be done to make Boston a better walking city?
Well, first of all, Ann Hirschman, let me return the compliment. This has been the most engaged and intelligent audience of the dozens or so forums we've had in the city of Boston. I think there are a number of things we should do. First of all, we should fix our sidewalks and ramps, particularly out of respect for our senior citizens and our disabled. Secondly, I believe that we should increase enforcement of parking laws. We should not tolerate double parking. We should not tolerate blocking out those ramps. And I believe that the public will benefit from it. Thirdly, I think we have to increase the level of awareness with regards to those on bicycles who actually find their way on sidewalks. I think that creates a very dangerous situation for many of our pedestrians as well. So more infrastructure repairs so that those in wheelchairs can actually use our sidewalks. More enforcement of the laws around our ramps, and more dedication in terms of raising the level of awareness for pedestrians and bicyclists alike. Many of our pedestrians are actually hit by our bicyclists. Thank you very much.
John Conley.
So I start again with my call for complete streets planning because we're going to put pedestrians on an even footing, pardon the pun, with motorists and cyclists, and that's really important when we think about this as a city. So we've also got to recognize with this, so that's where I'd start for first, but second, there's an equity piece here, and it would come true within the complete streets planning, but why is it that you can get off a bus in front of Faulkner Hospital and have a bus shelter, a beautifully painted crosswalk and signals that work, but you could take the same bus line down in front of the Shattuck Hospital and have to take your life into your own hands going across that's the equity piece at play, and when we have to think about how we work with our complete streets planning and making sure we're thinking about pedestrians. Last piece on that, traffic calming has to be a priority in how we design our streets and streetscapes. Really important if we're going to truly think about pedestrians. Thanks.
Mike.
And thanks for your leadership with Walk Boston and all you do. We need to upgrade our signalization for pedestrians and for cars. We are antiquated, we are behind, and we need to upgrade. We need to make those investments, and that will help create better predictability of behavior of cars and of pedestrians. And then we need to have a police department that starts enforcing traffic laws in the city of Boston. Holding us back. And when we do this planning, and then we also, only then can we start to really focus on bikes. But you can't start with bikes. Let's start with the cars, because in a battle between bikes and cars, the car always wins. And we also have to, as we plan, think about accessibility as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
The next question comes to us from the audience. It's a 30-second question, and we're going to attempt to work our way down the line, starting from Felix and heading over to Charles. Picking up on something that we were just talking about just now, many of the recent cyclist and pedestrian deaths that we've seen in Boston have been caused by collisions with trucks and buses. What would you do as mayor to reduce the danger posed to pedestrians and to bicyclists by large vehicles? Felix.
Maybe I'm going to sing a song here again, but the cycle tracks and ensuring that we can create separated spaces from the streets. It's also education towards our trucks and buses, and it's also about collecting information from all of its sources, from the police, from the hospitals, or where these accidents are happening the most. Sure, many end tragically in fatalities, but many end with people being hurt, and we should have that information as well so we know exactly where the problem is happening so we can attack the issue with good, sound data.
John, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that we know that there are some dangerous intersections. We've got to create some traffic calming in the dangerous intersections as well as adding cycling tracks. But then I think there are some intersections we might not know about. So collecting information, but particularly maybe using some app and doing some crowdsourcing. Working with bicyclists, letting us know what their experiences are, and then bringing some complete street planning to those areas. We know Commonwealth Ave has some issues around Commonwealth Ave. Washington Street has some issues. We haven't done anything about it. We actually have to address those issues.
Educating the community, and of course, being a former Boston police officer, law enforcement with the traffic, and then again, getting the information from the residents, and that's really important.
John?
Cycle tracks, for starters, again, the complete streets planning, and think about the young man, young school age boy who died over in Alston Brighton near Twin Donuts and the Horace Mann, Jackson Mann School. That intersection's a disaster area, and it was only a matter of time before that happened. That's better planning. And then also other more proactive pieces, not my idea, but something some biking advocates have talked to me about. Let's make sure that we have mandatory bike safety for all incoming freshmen in our colleges and universities, and let's do everything we can from a proactive standpoint to prevent.
Mike, 30 seconds on how you would reduce the danger caused by large vehicles.
Yeah, a couple things. I called for the start of a problem intersection task force. So what's been happening in the city is we wait for an accident to occur, and then we identify that intersection as a dangerous intersection. That's horrible, putting people's lives at risk. The biking community knows where those intersections are. We need to work on that. Sometimes it's as simple as just sliding a bus stop backwards 15 feet. We also need to get as many partners to support under truck gates, so that in the event that someone does fall, they don't fall underneath the truck, and that they're protected. We need to make that mandatory on public vehicles where they apply.
Bill, 30 seconds, please.
I'll let my voice the cycle tracks. We'll also say better signage and lighting in difficult intersections that we know already exist. Let's say that traffic enforcement. We have terrible traffic enforcement in Boston, and we see cars and buses and all sorts of things go right through traffic lights. And the last thing is we need to change our educational system for drivers. We need to really re-emphasize the fact that there are walkers and bikers that are also sharing the road and the sidewalk with them. And we need to do that for both bicycling education as well as for driver education.
Marty.
Thank you. I apologize, I have to leave after this question, but we have to slow the traffic down on our city streets. I mean, we have traffic speed limits that are 30 miles an hour and 25 miles an hour on some streets, and that's fast. People don't realize how fast it is, and it's fast. I think a lot of it's been said up here. Enforcement's important. Redesigning a lot of intersections is important. Education's important. There's not one solution to these problems. These are very difficult situations that we have to deal with. We have very small streets in our city of Boston. We have to find creative ways to be able to make sure that we connect bike lanes to make sure they're safe and travelable by everyone.
Charles.
I'm the last one to answer this question, so presumably everyone has come up with a solution by the time it gets to me. The only thing I like, and I agree with most of what my colleagues have to say, the only thing I would add is that we should not only look at the redesign of our streets, not only work on public education, but we have great engineers in this region. Why not take a look at how we can eliminate many of the blind spots on those large vehicles? Maybe with redesign of mirrors, cameras, there has to be a way to eliminate those blind spots.
Mark, can I just ask you, we got 3 hand-raising questions coming up, rapid fire.
Yeah.
Would you mind sticking around for 3 quick questions? Appreciate it. Please raise your hand for us if you would support a ballot measure to adopt the Community Preservation Act, which would enact a property tax surcharge that would help fund affordable housing, open space, and historic preservation. Please raise your hand for us if you would support an increase in the local assessment that Boston and other towns provide to the MBTA for service. Increasing the local assessments that the city of Boston provides to the T, if that would result in better service.
They got to reinvest it in Boston transportation.
Yes. And raise your hand if you would support raising other new local or regional revenue streams that would go into transportation.
How about gas?
MBTA, transport, sorry. Excellent. Your excuse, Marty, thank you.
I think I already voted on that. Yeah, we're going to need some tissue up here, some water drop. Spill it. Before we get electrocuted.
We have a question coming to us from Twitter, starting with Charles Yancey working our way back here. In 1 to 3 words, how did you get here tonight? And Marty, you can feel free to shout out on your way back. Charles.
Again, the mic doesn't work, so I guess I don't get a chance to... I cannot tell a lie. I took the car to a coffee school.
Bill?
Yes, I came to say. I started off this campaign bike riding, but I've traveled a lot and had a car.
Mike, how did you get here?
I carpool too.
I have a follow-up.
I certainly carpool.
In a blue Volvo with my Ross sticker on the back?
That's correct.
John?
I carpool with Mike Ross here. I walked here from my last meeting, but I will confess I'm going to be leaving here in a car.
I drove myself.
John?
Yeah, I carpool. There were 3 of us in the car.
Felix?
Same with me, 3 in the car, all the licenses.
All right, well, you know, since I work at the Dukakis Center, I would just say that after you're elected, we expect you all to be on the team, so. And I would also note, having worked to try to get the Community Preservation Act enacted in Boston the last time it was on the ballot, I'm absolutely thrilled by that show of hands, because that is a big difference in 10 years. Okay, so we're going to continue with these questions to specific candidates, and then we're going to give you 60 seconds to answer, and then we're going to give 2 other folks 30 seconds to respond. This question is for John Conley, with responses by John Barros and Felix. There are connections, obviously, between the issues of public health and transportation, and we haven't talked a lot about public health this evening. So how could transportation policies in Boston help us advance our public health objectives?
Well, it's all interconnected. And good transportation policy is good public health policy, good environmental policy. It's also good economic development policy. And that all goes to issues of equity and justice. Let's take the need for more bus rapid transit, effective bus rapid transit here. And I say that believing that it would be tough to get additional light rail investment in Boston. So the next mayor has got to prioritize going up to the State House and lobbying for more investments on bus rapid transit. We don't have a real connection from Logan to East Boston and Chelsea. That's an equity issue on a number of levels. That's how you connect poorer communities to the airport, but also to quality jobs in the seaport, and allow people to get there that way. So I think there's a significant issue on that front. Then we can get into the piece on air quality, and whether it's good work of Councilor Arroyo on trying to reduce diesel emissions in the city, or chronic asthma in our most underserved communities. When we have better public transportation, we should then have better air quality in our city. So it's vitally connected. It needs to be part of a holistic plan.
Great. So 30-second responses from John Barros.
Yeah, I just want to first start by, improving our transportation system is the best way to do this and reducing traffic. However, I think, the Massachusetts DPH, MAPC have developed what's called a health impact assessment tool. And the health impact assessment tool provides an assessment on each project to give us a sense of its health impacts, transportation projects, and I think we can actually extend it to other things. And really begin to think about what we can do better in the city of Boston so that we can improve health. Already? Wow. 2 things. Diesel emissions reduction ordinance, pass it. And then the other thing is to make sure that we have walkways and bike paths in every neighborhood.
As a lifelong asthmatic and a lifelong Bostonian, much too common that those 2 go together. I fully recognize the relationship between environment, transportation system, and health. I appreciate the call to pass the diesel emission reduction ordinance since I wrote it. And I'm, as mayor, will work with John Barros to pass it. Listen, our high asthma rates, I use that as an example. Neighborhoods that don't have the same access to public transportation as other neighborhoods have. Mattapan, Roxbury, parts of Dorchester. we know this. That's where the high accident rates are. East Boston, we can have a whole conversation about what the airport's doing today, quality in East Boston. And it's key. We have to before modes of transportation, pedestrian friendly, bicycling, public transit, vehicle. Once you do all four, then people will use the vehicle less. But you have to make sure that all four are available, accessible, and just.
Great, thanks very much. So now we're going to do another guest question. This question is going to be for Charles Clemens, and then we're going to ask for 30-second responses from Mike Ross and Charles Yancey. And J.C.
Good afternoon.
Loud and tell people who you are.
Hi, my name is J.C. Lasanza, and I'm a youth organizer with Bikes Not Bombs. I'm 16 years old, and we work with a group called BOCA, which stands for Bicyclists Organizing for Community Action. And what we do is, with communities, we do chain reaction all over the Boston area. We do tune-ups, free things like that, community easy access to getting flat top inner tubes, tires, things like that. And my question is, what creative solutions will you come up with to engage youth in other communities that are typically underrepresented in the transportation decision-making process?
Thank you. I'll say this, education is the key, and just like we have, or used to have, driver's ed in school, why not bicycle ed in school? It's real, thank you. It's education, like I said, education is the key, and when you have something that's right, and it's part of the solution, then we have to include everyone in this. And that, as I said, as mayor of the city of Boston, the Clemens administration is going to be totally transparent. And when we have organizations like yours located in beautiful Jamaica Plain, we'll definitely bring you to the table. And of course, have field trips to your organization, but also have you go into the schools and help teach the youth. Because the youth need to hear from the youth.
We have, we're talking about planning up here, and as a city councilor, I have a pick for planning processes that the DRA runs. And for a northeastern plan, I chose to have a youth be my representative. She's a member of Social Latina, lives in Mission Hill. Not only was she probably the most prepared person in the room, she probably contributed the most to the conversation. I'm also going to have my youth on the school committee have a binding vote for school committee decisions as well. So I believe in full empowerment of our young people.
I would certainly involve young people in the policy-making process, not only with regards to transportation, but many other vital issues. I believe that we should include young people on a newly formed transportation council that will take place under the Yancey administration.
Terrific. Thank you very much, JC.
We all know that Mayor Menino recently announced an ambitious goal of constructing 30,000 new housing units by the year 2020. We also know that some of these conversations about where you put these new homes can get a little bit tricky when we drill down into the neighborhood level. 60 seconds to John Barrows and then 30-second follow-ups to Charles Clemens and Bill Wolzak. What would you do to implement an ambitious housing goal like this, to ramp up housing construction on the neighborhood level?
Well, I think, Menino's been dead on housing being really important. 30,000 housing units, critical. Love the blueprint, what I've read, and his goals of including more working and middle-class families in affordable housing, really important. I think the challenge with what's happened, though, is that the city's already started to sell land for the housing. We've already started to put developers in position where they are paying a certain amount of money for the land, and they've got ideas of how they're going to use it to get their money back. And we have not planned with neighborhoods and residents about that. So we've once again put residents and developers on the opposite side of development, a plan that I think is the right plan. And we've created a situation which then is going to say, oh, Boston residents and community planning stops development. Well, we've set it up. We've got to do better planning. We've got to do better planning where the residents are leading that planning process and we know where we should be putting these houses. And then developers are hearing from those plans and saying, well, I'm going to invest on these lots here because I know residents want the housing units there so that we don't create the clash that's about to happen. Charles Clemens.
Exactly, and also moving the VRA from City Hall, having it partner with the Main Streets and, of course, the Neighborhood Development Corporation. But again, having the community at the table with the process. Thank you.
Bill?
Sure. Well, I'm going to take a little different tact on this. I think that there's certain issues that need to be handled regionally. And housing is definitely one of those regional issues, along with the sea level rising, transportation, economic development. We need a significantly bigger number than 30,000 units in order to be able to stabilize or to decrease housing prices, which are driving so many people out of the city, making it impossible for people to stay. So we're going to need a regional approach to that. We're also going to need to really do dense, transit-oriented development, and that has to be a major part of any solution for Boston's housing crisis.
We have a question for Mike, and then with 30-second follow-ons from Charles Yancey and John Connolly. We all know that improvements in transportation infrastructure, improvements in amenities, tend to drive up property values. What do you think the role is of a mayor, and how would you go about addressing gentrification and displacement issues?
We need to build more. We need to build much more significantly than even the 30,000 goal set by the mayor. When we brought in our property tax by building housing, and don't mean just in the core of our city, I mean in neighborhoods that are absolutely hungry for development, we'll create additional resources to spend on what we're all talking about up here and what we're all raising our hands up here. I think we can really do a lot more development. Besides, we have neighborhoods that are craving it. They're absolutely craving it. They're looking for a business district. They're looking for not being gentrified. And what we've been doing in the city is basically seeing neighborhoods gentrify one after the other. New people move in, and the people that used to live there moved out. That's a false choice. It's a false choice that we haven't had to make. We can build enough housing for all of us to be here. The other thing is that I worked to create the first for-profit dormitory on Huntington Avenue with some of the neighbors from the Fenway community. That one dormitory will throw off $1.5 million for our tax revenue. I think we can start to collect new revenue from for-profit dormitories, but also eventually from regular dormitories.
Charles?
Yes, I would look forward to encouraging greater housing development with a proportion of all new housing being dedicated for affordability. We have far too many long-term residents who are being priced out of the market in their own neighborhoods. If we're going to increase the level of housing production, we have to ensure that at least a proportion, perhaps 30%, should be affordable.
John?
So I think we all realize now in Boston that market rate is actually just another way of saying luxury, and very few people can afford market rate in Boston anymore. So we've got to use inclusionary zoning, make sure we're maximizing linkage, and prioritize affordable housing from a thoughtful plan. But we've also got to add middle market housing in, because market rate is not middle market. Middle market starts at $1 above qualifying for affordable and goes right up into the heart of the middle class. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to have some uncomfortable conversations around height and density and the parking requirement. It's the only way we can do it. Thanks.
All right, well, since we just heard the word parking, I think that that's a good topic to turn to, and maybe we'll get a little less agreement than we got. But first, we're going to do some rapid fire questions. These are the hand-raising ones again. So the first one is, would you commit to holding a nationwide search before you name the next transportation commissioner for the city of Boston? Raise your hand if yes for a nationwide search. Okay, so now we'll talk about some the projects like the Casey Overpass and Rutherford Avenue, where we're bringing overpasses and underpasses to street level. Do you support the proposed redesigns for Casey and Rutherford Avenue? Raise your hand if yes. Come on. No, great job. There we go, starting to see some differences. All right, now let's The City of Boston's Climate Action Plan actually committed the city to begin charging for on-street residential parking permits, which are now free as of last year, but this did not occur. Raise your hand if you would support charging for residential parking permits the way Cambridge and Somerville do. Reasonable prices for on-street residential parking permits. Okay? Raise your hand if you would support changing the prices of parking meters so that we had different prices in different neighborhoods and at different times of day to try to reduce parking and traffic congestion. Okay? And so now what we're going to do is we're going to do a question on parking. We're going to give everybody a chance, and since I think we've started at both ends, we'll start in the middle and work our way out somehow. The Boston Redevelopment Authority recently proposed to reduce the amount of parking that would be required as part of the development approvals for new residential construction in the city of Boston, which raised some controversy. What would your policy be on parking, both on-street parking and parking in new developments, and how would you balance the needs of encouraging people not to drive and the fact that 60% of the people who live in Boston still own cars? So why don't we start in the middle, John, and then we'll sort of alternate. So Mike, then Charles, and we'll do it in that way. 60 seconds each, Tom, for the timekeeper.
So we need to experiment with lowering the parking requirement. We need to find some appropriate places in the city. I would like to tie this to trans-oriented development. Again, in appropriate places where we can have a thoughtful plan, work with the community on it. What we need to see is if we really want to price in the middle market, if we want to get folks in Boston who are struggling to afford to stay in the city, we've got to lower construction costs. And so how do you do that? Well, one, you have a quicker permitting process where you're going to build to the plan and prioritize not luxury, but middle market and affordable. Two, you're going to do more height and density. And three, you're going to lower the parking requirement. In all three cases, those will bring costs down and allow us to price housing so that a young professional, an artist, an empty nester, a senior on a fixed income may actually be able to afford to stay in the city. So I think we've got to experiment with it in appropriate places, and then hopefully it will work, and then look to broaden the scope.
I've been a city councilor for 14 years, and in that time I've seen a huge change in this city. And I remember being in meetings in the Fenway, which is one of the greatest pedestrian neighborhoods in the city, ironically, given all the cars they see. And we were arguing with city planners to try to lower the ratio of zoning of cars to apartments way back then. And the developers actually were on board. They actually wanted to lower it as well. I think the marketplace is ripe for lower ratios. I think it would make it easier to develop. The cost of housing is too much today because you have to build on-site parking, and it's driving up the cost. And I was around when we pressed for shared drive, zip car to be brought in site. We have to codify that zoning in all places and get more aggressive on that as well as bicycle parking on projects as well. Thanks.
I'm undecided on this question right here, so I'm gonna pass.
Okay, that's fair. Bill?
Sure. We know that the number of cars in the city of Boston is actually going down. We can kind of trend that and look at what's changing with the emergence of the millennials who are less likely to own cars. And as a result, I think it has to be done depending on the neighborhood. But I do support the general idea of lowering the number of parking cars per development, especially in, as has been pointed out, in transit-oriented development. We need high density in transit-oriented developments. We need to be able to understand that people that live near transit stations are going to be far less likely to need a car. And so we need to make sure that that happens because it will lower the cost of housing, as has been pointed out. I think we also ought to experiment with really green prefab housing in Boston. As a way of driving down the cost and being able to produce more units that are affordable by Bostonians. And I think that's something that we haven't really done here in Boston, but I think it's we should be open to new ideas and innovation in that regard.
I'll start with me. So we, we absolutely, I think, need to make sure that transit equity is a lens that we use on this. And so I would say we need to create zones around transit nodes. And as close you are to the closer you are to a transit node, the less parking. The further you are to a transit node, then you allow them for more and more parking. But we need to create more density and eliminate parking next to our transit nodes. The Fairmont line has been mentioned. It's a line that we worked very hard on. We need to pack up that line. It's all this ability to create some economic development, some housing next to that line, and really pack it up. And we need to do that. And that's like no parking. But then as we get further into the neighborhoods where there aren't really good access to transportation, we need to have a different consideration. And I think we can balance this and make this work in Boston.
Well, I differ with the VRA on this. I think it has to be on a case-by-case basis in conjunction with neighborhood associations, because it may not be realistic to go with limiting the amount of parking spaces in areas that are already choked off for any parking at all. And with regards to the Fairmont line, I would not support limiting parking until we have a full-service line. I think it's unrealistic to expect people who live along the Fairmont line to give up their vehicles when they can only use the Fairmont line during the day and not at the weekends at all. So if we're successful in providing full-service transit service along the Fairmont line, then I certainly would support it. But in the meantime, it has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis with heavy neighborhood involvement, because we have to be realistic. Those individuals and those high-rises will own vehicles as well and exacerbate an intolerable situation that exists in many of our neighborhoods, like the North End, Back Bay, Beacon Hill.
I'm extremely open to the idea of limiting the parking requirement. Very much like the idea of transit-oriented development, and we should also stop being afraid of height in Boston. It's 47 square miles is our city. If we want more housing, in particular more affordable housing, there's one way to go to make that happen. If you do it by land mass, it's going to be very difficult to do it. But if you do it going up, you have a real opportunity to do more housing, more affordable housing. And we have to be careful here. We cannot assume that everybody's Boston is the same Boston. Low-income families, we know the neighborhoods they live in, the census tell us where they are. They also happen to be the neighborhoods that don't have access to safe bicycle lanes and don't have great public transit services. And when we have got to ensure that before we limit the one way they can get around quickly, that we are bringing bike lanes to every neighborhood in Boston, cycle tracks to every neighborhood in Boston, that we're looking at fair and equitable public transit in every neighborhood in Boston. And that's how we frankly help spur our economy and bring families out of poverty into the middle class.
Great, thank you. Paul?
We have a rapid fire question from Twitter. Please raise your hand for us if you would allow innovative taxi and ride sharing companies like Uber and Lyft. Question from the audience. We read in the Globe past 3 Fridays in a row now about becoming traffic nightmare that's heading for the seaport. But as you all know, because you read the Globe as well, Kendall Square has added millions of square feet in commercial space and residences without adding any vehicle trips. We're going to work our way down the line from Felix down to Charles. What lessons do you learn from the Cambridge example, and is that replicable in the seaport? Kendall has managed to add millions of square feet in residences and commercial space without adding any traffic trips. Is that a doable goal in the seaport? And what do you take from the Kendall Square example?
Well, to the heart of this...
30 seconds, sorry.
Sure, 30 seconds, got it. So to the heart of this is really, are we as leaders, all of us hoping to be the next mayor of Boston, one of us will eventually be the next mayor of Boston, prepared to learn from other cities, from other municipalities, from the cities next door, maybe not the cities next door, maybe cities across the country, maybe a city across the world. My answer is yes, absolutely. If they manage to figure it out, we should look at it.
Yeah, we should learn from Kendall. There's a lot to learn from Kendall, not just traffic management, but also in terms of clustering and producing new businesses. But Kendall has better transportation, public transportation options than the district, the Innovation District, right? So I think it's a no-brainer. If we were to invest the same kind of infrastructure in the Innovation District, we would decrease traffic. Charles?
I would agree. Strengthening our partnerships and just thinking outside the box, being fast moving, quick thinking, right down to the modern time.
John?
I just think this is all about holistic planning and having real infrastructure behind everything that we do, and then having great mixed use is critical to this. So it's very doable. And I'll just randomly throw in, as the Longfellow Bridge is under construction and the seaport's going on, all those pieces we might want to look at. Secretary Davey left. There you go. We might want to look at increased water shuttle access around the seaport and the harbor. I have to go. I apologize for leaving early, but I have another commitment and really appreciate this opportunity. Thanks a lot. Thank you. See my transportation plan at conleyforboston.com.
I've been saying that we can learn from Cambridge, and Cambridge can learn from Boston for my entire political career. So I think we can. Cambridge has strong parking minimums and requires bike parking. Those are things that we should be doing in the city. We also need to plan. When we plan development, it can't be a separate planning process for transportation, and then a separate planning process for bike transportation. These have to be integrated planning processes that occur at the same time, all the time, every time.
Bill? Oh, there is a plan, actually. The Innovation District, it's called Civil Line Phase 3. It is not being done because we didn't pass the governor's budget regarding transportation. And as long as we fail to fund the kinds of transportation programs that are necessary for being able to build up a section of the city, that's what's going to happen. I'm also worried a little bit about the Innovation District not having enough housing. If we had more housing being built in the area, we'd have more people living there, but it also has to be affordable housing. And it's been pointed out many times, if we had really good planning involved in all of this, we probably could have avoided this from the beginning. Charles?
I agree with many of my colleagues. I believe that the fact that we do have effective rapid transit systems in place in a different culture in Kendall Square, I believe that could be duplicated in the Seaport District, but it would require additional infrastructure improvements in our transit system.
Great, thank you. So now I'm going to ask a question. We'll start at your end and come back. Everyone will have 60 seconds. So there's been a lot of refreshing discussion this evening about transit-oriented development and putting more density near transit, and there's also been a lot of important comments made about the importance of community input. But there's a long history in the city of Boston of those two things coming into conflict with each other, where communities, in fact, oppose tall buildings, oppose additional density, don't necessarily want more development just because there is a transit station. So I want to ask everyone, and be as specific as possible, how would you manage the community input process around development in order to achieve your goals about transit-oriented development and greater density? And specifically, what would you do if there were a conflict between what you thought should get developed near transit and in certain neighborhoods and what the community said they wanted during that process?
Well, I would institute a process similar to the Article 80 process, but strengthen it by requiring the community organization, the community corporations that may be established as a result of that process to have a vote on that. And I'll have to live by it. The Community Advisory Committee at the Boston State Hospital, I think, is a good example. We developed 200 acres of land through that process, through a master planning process, and some ideas which were being preferred by the governor or the mayor, many of them were rejected because the community did not want it. And I believe that process should take place in the rest of the city. If there's a compelling public need that I, as mayor, would have to consider regarding any type of override, I would make that as difficult as possible.
Bill?
Okay. This is all about master planning. We do a terrible job in the city of Boston with regard to master planning. When it works well, we can often come up to some sort of understanding of what we're looking for in our neighborhood. I participated in a master planning process for the Columbia Point area a couple of years ago. The result of it was a plan that was vetted by the community and vetted by the institutions on Columbia Point and the businesses. We all came to the conclusion that we needed several thousand units of housing in that area, and that was passed. It was passed because we had an opportunity to think about it, to deal with it, and to ruminate about what its meaning was, what kind of vision did we have for that area, what would we want to see happen. I think good master planning will lead to good vision for our communities and will lead to great development that answers the problems of our community. It's the kind of thing that didn't happen in East Boston with regard to that casino. If we had a good planning process, we would have never come to that. People in East Boston would have never decided to have a casino in East Boston. If we're going to be able to do good master planning, we need to make sure that everybody's engaged in the process and it takes the amount of time necessary to be able to come up with a good process and a good plan.
There's some expression that's like something like a city gets the politicians it deserves, or something like that. Well, I would say a city gets the planning that it makes real. I think the problem with why there's so much opposition for planning, for density and real development in our city is because the planning process is not real. It's a dog and pony show. It's not real. I believe in a planning process where the client is the neighborhood, where real planners go out, where real architects go out, where real transportation planners go out and engage the community. And when the process is real, I believe that people will come out. And so instead of just having professional meeting goers who are great and who have invested so much time and energy in our city, but they're tired and they need new life and they need the rest of us to come out to these meetings. If it's real, I believe we'll all come out to those meetings, and I think that will be the difference.
Exactly. With the neighborhood development corporations, the Main Streets, task force, nonprofits, we have to realize that this is a democracy, and this is your year where you can vote non-productive elected officials out of office and productive elected officials into office. So it's about bringing back that trust. And as I stated earlier, when it comes to community policing, when I was at Latin school, listen to the people, and then the final word is the mayor. But the mayor has to speak for the people.
Yeah, I've spent 2 decades of my life doing community planning. I'm a community planner by both profession and training. There is a good way to do community planning and a bad way to do community planning. One of the things that we tend to create that are problems when in development is we allow developers to spend money up front. And when they spend money up front, they're already thinking about a development. They're figuring out how much they can get out of that piece of land. And then we put them in front of the neighborhood as if the neighborhood has a voice and a say, but there it's very, very limited. We have to stop doing that. We have to allow neighbors to come in, plan for land use, and then tell developers what would be supported. So when they invest in that, it's something that the neighbors would support. We did the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative. We created a neighborhood plan called the Dudley Street Neighborhood Master Plan. I'd love to share with anybody here. And after we did that master plan, we then rezoned our neighborhood block by block. Developers knew what we would support. They came in, they put it on the table, we supported it, and it moved forward, and we changed the whole neighborhood. Boston can do that neighborhood by neighborhood.
You know, I'm an organizer by training. In fact, I was an organizer before I became a member of the Boston City Council, and I'm very grateful for many in this room who have allowed me to serve as a city councilor in Boston for the last 4 years. This is exactly a job for an organizer. You know, when I started organizing, there was janitors making $9 an hour. None of the powers that be, as in the building owners, think of the people who own the Prudential building, thought that they should make more. But by organizing, they now make $16 an hour. They didn't have health benefits, they now do have health benefits. In fact, I know that when you bring ordinary people together, you can achieve extraordinary results. And I believe that the residents of Boston, in fact, do support transit-oriented development, will support the idea of building up if it brings more affordable housing. I don't think I'm in conflict with the majority. I think I speak with the majority on this issue. And as mayor, I will organize to bring folks together to ensure that these projects come through. Also, I will bring real planning. The Boston Redevelopment Authority does not do real planning, and no foreseeable future will be doing real planning, and no one here should depend on the benevolence of the next mayor to have a voice in the direction of this city. By removing the planning department from the BRA, you will in fact have a voice in the direction of this city.
This one came in over Twitter. I like it a lot, so it's going to be 30 seconds. We started out by asking, what do you think is the most livable city, most livable neighborhood in the city? Curious what you all think is the least livable neighborhood in the city. Not in a pejorative sense, but who needs the most love? And specifically, how would you go about basically, urbanizing spaces that need help? We'll start with Charles Yancey and work our way back here. 30 seconds.
I was going to need 30 more seconds to think about it. The least livable part of the, I can't think of the least livable part of the city. There are challenges in every neighborhood. Certainly, in the neighborhood where I live, when I was first elected, we did not have a police station in Mattapan. We fought hard. We got a police station. We got community centers. We got the violence under control for a while, but there's still some issues. I happen to believe that Dorchester and Mattapan are one of the better places to live. I can't speak for some of the other neighborhoods, but there are challenges there that we can deal with, and certainly will deal with it as mayor of Boston.
Bill, in terms of transportation infrastructure, parks, open space, the things that we generally agree on as livability, who needs the most help, and what would you do to bring that up?
Well, there's certainly open space deserts in our city, kind of southwest of Codman Square. There's areas that don't have any real open space whatsoever and are pretty far away from it and have just a bus line to bring you to a long trip to a subway line. It costs a lot of money to be able to use public transit in those areas. There's not a good access to supermarket or other good stores that you could buy things in. I think that what we need to do is we need to look at better planning for neighborhoods that have these food deserts and open space deserts and transportation problems, and that's one of those areas that we really need better planning on.
I've been talking about this the entire campaign. I think this is the issue. We have neighborhoods where right now they've shut down for the night. There's nowhere to go. There's no restaurant to bring your family or to grab a late night dinner. There's no supermarket to get last minute shopping. There's no community serving bank that's investing in a business district, and the business district that is there is wholly inadequate. We have neighborhoods that are craving the very amenities that we all crave. They want great places to bring their families and to go shop, and we need to build that. That's not going to just happen. We need to create empowerment restaurant licenses. We need to replan and rezone those communities and build housing for those communities. That's where we need to put our work. Charles?
So the question is, who needs the most love, correct?
Yes.
Real simple, the underserved. When you look at a chain, you look at the weakest link, you strengthen the weakest link. So we have to do an in-depth assessment of those communities. I know in Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, definitely, we have some raggedy buses that come through our city, and it's time for us to take care of those buses, the transportation, and then when it comes to the ride, our elderly, they are an asset. There's no reason why we should have doubled the rate when it comes to the ride for our elderly. They're an asset, and they shouldn't even be living under a threat of losing their homes or being homeless.
I guess there are a couple of different lenses you can use to sort of answer this question by, but I would think Mattapan is a neighborhood that feels disconnected. You don't have really great transportation options to Mattapan. The square, Mattapan Square, talk about needing some love. Mattapan Square needs some love. You don't have a lot of good pedestrian reason for pedestrians to be in and out of Mattapan Square. There's low activity. I was just talking to the director of the Mattapan Farmers Market, right? I mean, we've got to figure out how to really invest some more activity in Mattapan and make sure that there's transportation.
of our neighborhoods in Boston have 80% of all of the violent crime happening in Boston, I would qualify that as unlivable. 80% of the violent crime in Boston is happening in 3 neighborhoods. Those are the neighborhoods that need some love. How do we get there? Real plans to create pathways out of poverty. When the unemployment rates go down, so do the crime rates. How do we get there? Improving our public schools and ensuring that we're committed to closing the achievement gap, the civil rights issue of our time. And yes, it includes transportation, because when there's transportation justice, the neighborhoods have an opportunity to rise. And when there's not, they don't, and we're choking the life out of them.
Great. So, one more question. We'll start at Felix and go back, and then we'll give everyone a chance to make a closing statement. So the question is about the role of the business community in making our city more livable. And in the transportation city, we have a great city of more than 600,000 residents, but during the week, we actually have close to 850,000 people in our city because of the folks who are working here. And we obviously want folks to come to Boston to work. We want employers to be here. They use the same transportation system their employees do, and their employees need our city to be livable, whether they live and work here or just work here and go home at night. How would you work with the business community? What would you expect from the business community in making a contribution to livability and to improving the transportation system in the city? Starting with you.
They must be, and at times, I'll say they have been, partners when it comes to transportation. When developing new projects, we have got to work with the developers and the incoming businesses to have them understand the 4 basic modes of transportation and understand that we must develop around those 4 basic modes. But we also have to support our small businesses, right? By making neighborhoods more walkable and bicycle friendly, you are actually supporting the small business districts. And that relationship, I believe, is understood within our small businesses and with folks who want to go and walk through and shop it. And I'll say, frankly, I'm also the only candidate up here who has a very real and direct plan on how we would support our small businesses by ensuring they have access to credit. It's called Invest in Boston. I bring it up because tomorrow the City Council will be voting on this. $1 billion in banks today that the City of Boston has, $1 billion. And we don't ask a single bank if they lend to small businesses, potential homeowners, if they're part of the foreclosure solution or the crisis, if they support development projects that bring more housing to our city. We don't ask those questions and we give them $1 billion. I think that's wrong. So I filed legislation called Invest in Boston that says if you want that money, tell us what you're doing in our neighborhoods, and we'll do business with the banks that invest in Boston. That vote is coming up tomorrow at the Boston City Council. I ask everybody here, regardless of who you support for mayor, please support that legislation and call the City Council and tell them that you do, so that we can pass that and really help ensure that we rejuvenate every small business district in our city.
I just wanted to let you know that I support that. I think you've been doing a good job on the council. You should stay there.
I can't stay there. I'm running from there.
As a small business owner, owning a restaurant on Bowden Street, it's really difficult to get to Bowden Street. It is difficult to get to that restaurant. And we absolutely need to make sure that our transit system is working for the small business on Main Street. But we can also partner with our large business owners. We can partner with the universities, the hospitals. We can partner with corporations. And I talk in my plan around the U-Pass and making sure that universities are buying in bulk, etc. Well, we can give right now. Large companies provide administrative ways for you to buy, but we can provide large companies with more incentives to create to campaign and have their employers buy more, and then the more they buy after a certain percentage, we can give discounts. And I think we can work with them on that and make sure that they're a partner in supporting our transit system.
I will agree with the two. However, we have to remember that Boston is a 24-hour city. I worked the midnight shift when I was a Boston police officer, so we need full services. However, I think the small businesses have contributed enough. We need to start giving small businesses incentives, especially when they hire people from the community, and those small businesses that have been in business the longest, and we give them bigger incentives. Thank you.
Felix, I support the legislation, as you well know, and I congratulate you on the great work that you did on it. I also agree with John Barrows. I think you should stay on the city council. I mentioned to this crowd tonight that I have an urban caucus concept, which is bringing people together to be a force of change at the State House. That also includes businesses. Early in my career, I worked with restaurants, nightclubs, third shift employers like hospitals to get the MBTA to run a night owl service. And for a brief period in our city, we had MBTA until 3 in the morning. I promise you, I will bring that back. And we'll bring it back by, sure, lobbying, but also through plans like UPass. UPass would require every single college and university to buy a Charlie card for their kids at a significantly reduced rate. It would raise about $50 million. And something like the MBTA Night Owl service, I think, is around $10 million. We'd have plenty of money left over to spend on other resources.
I also support Felix's legislation and will be happy to sign it as mayor. I encourage
Plan on passing it on Wednesday.
All right. Oh, wait. I've been working with the business community for most of my career, over 30 years, and have sit on various boards with the Chamber and the Massachusetts Roundtable, the AIM, other organizations. And I can tell you that they were the ones that came up with the alternative billion-dollar budget for transportation that was largely funded by the increase in gas tax, which I think is a really good thing to move for. I assume that the legislature would take the opportunity to look this as cover, hey, the business community is behind this, so you don't have to worry about passing an increase in taxes, but they didn't. They didn't pass it. They passed a lousy bill instead that only funds a portion of what's needed for transportation costs. I think it's really important that we engage the business community. I think the business community can be allies in many of these things. They don't want to see Boston's population have to move out. They want more housing in the area. They are willing to participate in these. I think what they need is leadership from a mayor who is able to work with them on a fair basis, that doesn't play, doesn't do the crony thing, that makes sure that everything's on the up and up and things are being reformed, and that there is a plan and a vision for the city that includes them.
I call upon the business community to support our schools, to support our students, to support the proposal to establish a rapid transit line along the Fairmont line to make it easier for people who live in Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan to access the jobs downtown that so many people from outside of the city of Boston have at this time. I also wanted to add, in reaction really to the previous question, that some of the best homes in the city of Boston are located in Mattapan. Some of the best people in the city live in Mattapan. And the greenest building in the entirety of the city of Boston is in Mattapan at the Boston Nature Center. We have a lot to offer. And while there are challenges and certainly areas where we need to improve infrastructure in that part of the city, I don't think anyone at this table meant to suggest that Mattapan was unlivable. It is extremely livable, and we certainly know that in spite of some of the violence that takes place in different parts of the city, including Mattapan, that there are great people who live there, and it's extremely livable and a great place to raise a family.
So we appreciate everybody's very thoughtful answers, and we want to give each of the candidates an opportunity to make a closing statement on anything that you would like to say to the voters in 30 seconds before we end our forum this evening, and we'll start at the far end and come back down the table.
Yes, my name is Charles Yancey, and I'm running for mayor of Boston because I have a vision of the city, of being the cleanest city, the city with the best schools, and the greenest city in the United States of America. I have 30 years of experience in city government, more than any of my opponents. I've raised 4 children, and And now my wife and I are the proud grandparents of 5. We are dedicated and committed to providing a strong vision for the city of Boston, one where city government works for you, not the other way around. Thank you very much for attending this conference this evening.
Bill?
This election is about vision and leadership. Boston was founded on a grand vision, right? John Winthrop, City upon the Hill. We can achieve a grand vision if we're able to harness the great resources of Boston. We can do this. Boston is a great city, and Boston can be a great city across all of its neighborhoods. It's the reason why I oppose the casino. The casino is an insult to that grand vision for Boston because it taxes poor people for the benefit of filling our revenue. It's also something that we need to do as a community. We need to understand how we can become the great city that we can be by harnessing resources, by bringing all of our institutions together, and by meeting with people to make sure that we're all on board to achieve that grand vision. I ask you to consider me. I'm the second person on the ballot. Thank you for listening.
Mike?
I've been riding a bike my whole life. In 2002, when I was a freshman on the city council, I had one budget priority because I knew that Boston was the worst bicycling city in America. And it was to hire a bike star. Nicole Friedman's here and has done a great job, Nicole, and I appreciate your service in our city. My colleagues looked at me like I was out of my mind. They didn't understand why I was doing this. And let me just apologize to this community for you have been being ignored for so long. And let me congratulate you for bringing this case center stage, because now look at you. Look at this room, and look at all of us. You're being listened to. I believed in you in 2002, and I'll continue to work with you. I hope you consider voting for me for Mayor of the City of Boston. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
My name is Charles Clemens, and Robert Kennedy said there are those people that look at things the way they are and ask the question why. I dream of things that never were and ask the question, why not? Why not quality transportation? Why not quality transportation for the city of Boston? My name is Charles Clemens. I can't be bought, and I'm the first name on the ballot. Thank you.
John?
Well, let me just first start by saying I love Mattapan. The people of Mattapan are great, like all of our other neighborhoods. And I've been working in a neighborhood that's been distressed for many, many years. A neighborhood that I grew up in, and was fortunate enough to work to help revitalize, building affordable housing, working to create sustainable planning, and include residents as leading that planning, as the experts, and helping to support them with the data, with the information, making all the right choices to make that neighborhood a better neighborhood. And I want to bring that to scale. I want to work as mayor to include all of Boston's neighborhood in our planning process so that we can have a more livable city. Thank you.
Felix?
My name is Felix Royo. I'm honored to be a city council today. And unlike Mike, I have not been bicycling my whole life. I started around 4 years old. I took the training wheels off around 5. Start improving. I'm committed to transportation justice, and I'm committed to a city that plans around all 4 basic modes of transportation all of the time. Walking, cycling, vehicle, and public transit. Why? Because I'm committed to creating pathways out of poverty for the 1-5 Bostonians living in poverty. Because I'm committed to closing the achievement gap in our schools. Because I'm committed to having safe, affordable, and healthy neighborhoods. And I know that transportation justice helps do that. I understand the holistic relationship that we have and how transportation justice helps create all those things. I ask all of you to please consider me for a vote on September 24th for Mayor of the City of Boston. For more information, please visit forwardfelix.com.
Thank you to all. Walk Boston, and I want to thank all of you so much. This has been a terrific evening. I think we've all learned a great deal, and I want to take just a couple seconds to thank the many, many volunteers who helped put this evening together, the many sponsors, the Boston Public Library for hosting us, to Stephanie and Paul for doing such a fantastic job moderating. We're going to let our candidates leave because we know you have places to go. Thank you.